Banana beer escapes the sides of his mouth and crawls the mountainous terrain like disinhibited ghosts. He woke up with self-preservation in the morning, and by evening, he felt something different. He has his machete equipped, and the sexual crimes he will do are also equipped like it's not something a part of who he is, but instead an item. If you ever need to be yourself in a pinch, drink. His conscience, which is only a positive thing when it has him hostage, dissipates away in a ball of ethanol. The whole country of Rwanda is regularly themselves. Alcohol can only open up your fantasies to the world to a certain degree. Now that the country is inebriated on genocide, they're themselves twicefold. All inner things are permitted. The original sin that is only sin through a sober, conscious shackled context is freed, and now the fantasies can euphorically sing-song with each other. Another man sifts through a pile of Tutsi bones to make sure the ratios of the skulls are right. He's perched over the marrow ravenously, trying to recreate the bone structure of the Tutsi that he's in love with. He's a Hutu ethnically, and that's important. He loves the image of the skull. He can confide his dark feelings in them. He believes in evil. He believes he is evil, but his evil, he says, must be negotiated with. The fantasy of the Tutsi skulls he lords over asks him to violently attack its evil. Some might take offense to saying, I'm just following orders to a German. Elizaphan would say, but why would it be offensive if they were just following orders unless they weren't designed to be evil? Elizaphan, the Christian Hutu pastor, received a letter. Tomorrow we will be killed with our families, it read from the Tutsis huddled up together in a church. The Hutus and Tutsis were family at one time. Elizaphan said that there was nothing he can do. Some say Christianity is a religion for the individual more than the community. In pagan communities, the most evil thing was causing infighting, because they were pragmatic and a fragmented community doesn't survive. They didn't give a damn about inward evil. Elizaphan cradles his self-preservation every night before bed. What is martyrdom in Elizaphan's Christianity except the victimhood that accomplishes self-preservation? Except he was not thinking religiously when he read the letter where families and murder and tomorrow were present. He is a Hutu pastor after all. He has to be obsessed with Christian things. The genocide is tapered off now that a Tutsi army has regained control of the Rwandan government. Like learning how to walk again after a stroke, Rwandans have to remember how to calculate how much of themselves they can reveal according to the social laws. Elizaphan realizes this wasn't the kind of genocide that happens through slow deceptions. It's easier to be a relatable victim if he says, I was in a manipulative relationship with Adolf. He didn't see me for me. I was just following orders. His best argument through a jaded cadence is, well, we killed 800,000 Tutsis in 100 days by hand. No trains, no bureaucracy, but we have no real agency. We're creatures of impulse, and I was trying to survive. Then he went home, and the impulses that jerked him around like he was a docile horse, with its exposed arteries being used as reins by a tyrannical stagecoach, suddenly lost its predatory conscious form and became simple feelings. Feelings that are there for us to feel in their servitude. And with his new freedom, he was generous to his family because he's responsible for his generosity. Genocides are good for giving people the confidence to come out of the Machiavellianism closet. Come out whenever you're comfortable, you say. They'll come out whenever it suits their purpose. It's also interesting that people say they came out of the closet, as if they themselves were the thing that came out of a closet. But when people that are ashamed to be evil say we, not I, have a genocidal capacity, it's implied that the genocide is coming out of a closet that they themselves are not inside of, like they're talking about a shady relative. John, who wrote Revelation, appears before Elizaphan when he's alone. John has dark circles under his eyes which are alive with visions and mania. In some ways, John is a natural shadow to Elizaphan. John is a dreamer. He felt so alienated from people because they weren't on board with his fantasy of Christianity. And his fantasies were vivid. He didn't merely create the disturbing psychedelic return of Jesus Christ. It was revealed to him slowly every time he was denied a catharsis, when he felt the true nature of humans to not be properly judged, by peeling away all the personas and anti-genocidal empaths away, leaving a naked, emaciated psychopath. The disgusting sinner can't be seen no matter how much John pries through all its hiding spots. John has to see it one way or another, because he was denied the most fundamental affirmation from the empathetic persona that the psyche needs like oxygen. Until the sinner appears before him in his mind, smashed by an incense burner with locusts grotesquely fluttering, and lands bowed with 7 eyes. All this makes Elizaphan extremely uncomfortable because he relies on his community to supply him with the right to be loved, even when the Hutus were hacked and essayed. Elizaphan was darting his eyes all around to find the nearest community cohesion. In this way, he is not so Christian, but he does believe in evil. The inner Machiavellian in him that understands morality without having absolute moral judgments screams out from him. Carl Jung appears. John side-eyes him, still lustful for judgment. Jung plays with his archetypes in his pocket. Remember the image of the Tutsi skull and the inner darkness that needed to be negotiated with? Jung opens his red book and reads some cryptic inscriptions. I was in a desert. I went to a cave that led neath. There was a black ocean inside. A red sun was submerged with serpents swarming. That was the darkness inside of me. He punctuates. All this sounds alien to Elizaphan, as alien as his ego is to the violence he perpetrated. All machetes and male sexual organs and alcohols and bloodstrings are things outside of himself. They're not personal to him like the fantasies he clenches so closely to his chest. The red serpent-laced sun looms over Rwanda, and the blood hail escaping from the persona bodies can't tell if the red is coming from the dashes or the sun that has nothing to do with them. Elizaphan looks up at the flesh star and a primordial horror stirs in him. Jung takes Elizaphan's god out from the reclusive place where his fantasies creep. He has a streak to him that wants to have a more personal relationship with the image. The impressionistic drawn Ethiopian Jesus wilts its papier-mâché brown off a more abstract entity, leaving gapes of light. Elizaphan can think more abstractly than most, but his sense of community keeps him grounded. Jung takes the motionless god and casts him into a dark entrance. Elizaphan throws himself at the threshold to reanimate his god symbol with himself, but the primordial horror halts him. Go into your unconscious to retrieve him, Jung entices. What's on the other side is obscured by a curtain. He wants to go in, but he knows that acknowledging his unconscious by going inside would make him guilty. When the genocide was no longer permitted, there were far too many Hutus to prosecute in a formal legal way. That would have taken 100 years. They had to regress to an ancient, more archetypal form of justice called gacaca, testimony-based. Rwandans would have to out their own family. This was very awkward. More awkward than having to regrettably murder you sadistically. This form of testimony that prowled in a Neolithic Africa with the psychotic animals and humans wants these archetypal evils to have their word. What the modern legal system does is protect us from our own darkness without protecting the accused from our darkness. True justice relies on the illusion that it's not about emotional closure. That wouldn't be hard to admit if the ways we seek to get that closure didn't have its hackles raised and its depravity gnashed. By having a judicial structure that pretends to not reflect the structure of the intrinsically evil agendas of our emotions. That allows us to eviscerate the guilty using a true medium to block out that side of us. I say true medium because people think there is something false about the structure of our emotions. Our emotions are too naive and innocuous to have a scheme. Here's an objective structure that says you deserve to hurt. I didn't come up with this hurt, you fuckface. And so Rwandans have trouble taking accountability of their darkness when they throw their families under the bus for whatever emotional agenda that isn't theirs. Ego death is alcohol for the soul, Jung says to Elizaphan. Jung takes his golden axe and violently murders Elizaphan's ego, in touch with why it's personal. Rwandans remember they can just drink to be comfortable with their darkness. They enter and acknowledge their unconscious world via gacaca. Elizaphan's personal mask, studded with crucifixes and hearts, falls off his face. He hobbles into his unconscious like some lethargic arachnid. He looks around and sees Jung's desert, Jung's cave, Jung's red serpent sun. Jung, who is still riding the high of his murder despite being an otherwise collected person, says, "Your darkness is my darkness, is all ancient symbols' darkness." Elizaphan knows where his god is. He goes down into the black ocean's hatal depths. He finds his Christian God that his once ego-bound self would have said is Christianity's. Its body is being dragged around the surface of the red sun. Entities inside the sun exhale archetypal contents into the God symbol, causing it to intermittently come alive with autonomy. Elizaphan doesn't want his God to have autonomy outside of his own creativity, and then he remembers that's the whole theme of the Abrahamic God. Pre-Zoroastrian Judaic divinity manifested direct human traits and temperaments. To a less imaginative person, they were mere reflections of us as opposed to being fundamentally other, more Jungian. But what Elizaphan had to rationalize when he used Satan's temperament to inflict mass blood hail was that the virtuous and the sinful nature was inside us, and that in order to identify Satan's agendas we needed to become immersed in his own shadow. Elizaphan isn't stupid, he's creative. He watched violence from a distance and understood it was machetes he was directly hacking in his innermost self. Disassociating himself from morality in a fit of self-preservation, he whistle-blew Satan's ways without good or evil notions, just himself, and his own self-discovery that took a violent shape. The Abrahamic God is much more archetypal because we have to get to know him, despite having a fundamentally different mind than us, unlike a jealousy or fertility or agriculture God. Our collective unconscious, comprised of all the mysterious human symbols and thematic proclivities, seems to exist in a language outside of ours. It can't directly talk to us just like two different coding languages can't, but it can use symbols and manifestations to leave us riddles. In this way, the anthropomorphic pagan gods are more pawns and symptoms of a more underlying unconscious intelligence that we don't have access to. Elizaphan is caught between a world where he has to confront his darkness from afar, using other people's violence, thereby acknowledging the more abstract hierarchy inside of us, and a world where he's protecting his community-commemorated ego by only using violent symbols as a form of vague self-transformation, but not seeing the deeper cosmic order. Jung says in his Red Book that gods have to be murdered violently in order to renew what the gods represented in the first place. When the god symbol stagnates into an arbitrary signal, it drifts away from the archetypal darkness. Become too comfortable with the madness of the idea that symbols can speak the Lovecraftian collective unconscious in tongues. Then a murderous reinvention needs to happen. And as Elizaphan murders remotely, he says violence, the most darkness confrontational action, is the most necessary amount of creative madness to remember what makes me evil. Yo, if you enjoyed this essay, rant, weird art project thing, then please subscribe because I do have a part 2 I'm going to be making.